River Sokoto, which is a seasonal river, gets so much fund, or Hadija gets, or Chad gets. When you come to the Niger Delta, of 1,001 rivers, you can't count them. I've just come from this location now. All these places I mentioned now are locations for my film, saying that Nigeria has neglected all these ports and concentrated on Lagos. They're talking about ambience. I'm talking about inland, supplying, feeding the. Nigeria has just forgotten all those ports because the new oil, fossil, requires just a network of pipelines to pump the product straight into tankers out in the sea, which then take the product abroad, US, Europe, China now. So from once you step out of Lagos, the economy is dead. They tell you they built some new beds in Port Harcourt, in Warri, but that security and shallow entrances of this thing do not allow importers and exporters to go to those areas. I mean, it's just bunkum. It's political will. That has kept Lagos going. Lagos is the same belt we are in. While Brutu is dead and Fukados are dead, ports over there, totally dead. And the point of my forward is that because power is in the hands, has been in the hands of the majorities so far, all this time, since independence, there has not been political will to develop minority areas, even when they are the producers of the wealth of the country, like Niger Delta. That's my passion in my work. I'm not a politician and all that like my brother E.K. Clark. I'm not he speaks, but I often ask him, what difference have we made to our people?
Before we go to our next segment, here's important information for those of you who are keen on exploring your writing talents. Fiction blogger Tunde Leye, who was once a guest on our show, has launched the second edition of his writing competition tagged Write Right. It is open to anyone who is willing to send in an entry. Write Right's stated objective is to discover and reward new writers without the entry barrier of being previously published. The rigorous competition process means that only the best of the best will win the 250,000 naira prize money, plus support and mentorship for writers so that they go on to publish their works and put out great writing. You can get more details of Write Right from the web address displayed on your screen. Now, back to our second icon, former anti-apartheid leader Nelson Mandela, who passed away last week in Johannesburg, South Africa. He died of a lung infection at the age of 95. It is impossible to mention or analyze the volumes of books that have been written about the man, popularly called Madiba. His very life was like a composition of countless volumes of books. Even though we did a bit of this in the previous episode, what we want to do now is to introduce or reintroduce, as the case may be, to you a few important books of his life. Some of those books, of course, are his own works, including his famous autobiography titled The Long Walk to Freedom. If you are thinking of knowing more about or learning from one of the greatest Africans that ever lived, here are 10 of the books you can get and read. Long Walk to Freedom, the autobiography of Nelson Mandela by Nelson Mandela himself. This best-selling classic is Mandela's moving and exhilarating autobiography. destined to take its place among the finest memoirs of history's greatest figures. Conversations with Myself by Nelson Mandela. This book, released in September 2011, is a personal archive that draws on letters, notebooks, taped conversations, and prison diaries to take a thorough look at all aspects of Mandela's life. Favorite African Folk Tales by Nelson Mandela. This book was first released on October 17, 2007. In an effort to share traditional African folklore with as wide an audience as possible, Nelson Mandela in His Own Words by Nelson Mandela, with contributions from Bill Clinton. It was released in December 2004. This collection of speeches Mandela made throughout his life is organized by topic. Subjects include the struggle for freedom, the hard work of reconciliation and nation building, religion, education, and culture. The Struggle is My Life by Nelson Mandela. Released in October 1990, this book contains Nelson Mandela's speeches and political writings from his days as a leader of the ANC Youth League in 1944 until his release from prison in 1990. Nelson Mandela by Himself, the authorized book of quotations by Nelson Mandela. Released on October 1st, 2011, this collection gathered from privileged authorized access to Mandela's vast personal archive of private papers, speeches, correspondence, and audio recordings. How Far We Slaves Have Come, South Africa and Cuba in Today's World by Nelson Mandela and Fidel Castro. On July the 26th, 1991, Nelson Mandela and Fidel Castro spoke together at a rally of tens of thousands in Matanzas, Cuba. Mandela and Castro discussed the place in the history of Africa of Cuba and Angola's victory over the invading US-backed South African army and the resulting acceleration of the fight to bring down the racist apartheid system. A Prisoner in the Garden by Nelson Mandela Foundation. This book provides an extraordinary visual journey documenting Nelson Mandela's 27 years in prison on Robben Island. Prisoner in the Garden contains previously unpublished images, documents, and diary. In the Words of Nelson Mandela by Jennifer Crees Williams. Released in April 26, 2011, the author, a South African journalist, in this book compiled a collection of Mandela's observations called from a variety of sources. Nelson Mandela, I Am Prepared to Die. This is one of the most inspiring speeches ever penned and spoken in human history. It is a must-read and every bit as important as Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. It is long yet brilliant and absorbing. It is available free on the internet. We acknowledge Amazon.co.uk for those reviews. I hope you will go there or walk into any good bookshop to get yourself copies of some of those inspiring books. Finally, here's my copy of one of Madiba's books, which we introduced to you a few minutes ago, Nelson Mandela by Himself. I will read from page 74. Death is something inevitable. When a man has done what he considers to be his duty to his people and his country, he can rest in peace. Don't forget to join us on any of our social media platforms displayed on your screen. My name is Olakunle Kasumo. Remember,